Grief has a way of burning itself into your memory, every moment carved so sharply that even years later you can still feel its edges. I remember the last real conversation I had with Emily, my first wife, as clearly as if it happened yesterday. The hospital room smelled faintly of antiseptic and lavender lotion, the one she liked because it didn't sting her skin. She was tired, fading fast, but her mind was still razor sharp. "Promise me you'll protect him," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Whatever happens, whatever life brings, make sure Liam's okay. That the money goes to him, no one else." It wasn't the first time she'd said it, but this time I could feel the finality in her tone. She was talking about the settlement from the hospital, the one they gave after admitting they'd missed what could have saved her. Emily wanted part of that to go straight into a savings account for our son. She'd already transferred the rest of her personal savings there, too. I promised. I told her I'd keep it safe, that I'd make sure it stayed his, untouched, until he was ready to use it. College, maybe a home one day, whatever he needed to build a life she would never get to see. After she passed, I kept that promise like a sacred vow. I built on it, adding what I could from my paycheck, watching it grow quietly in the background of our lives. I never touched it, never even thought of it as mine. It was Emily's gift to her son, nothing more, nothing less. When I met Sarah years later, I didn't expect to fall in love again. She had 2 kids of her own, Emma and Josh, and she was trying to rebuild after a messy divorce. We took it slow, careful not to rush the families together. Eventually, we did marry, and we even had 2 little ones of our own. 5 kids under one roof. Loud, chaotic, exhausting, but full of life. From the start, Sarah and I talked openly about money. We agreed to save a set amount each month for all the kids, equally. We never talked exact numbers. It was about fairness, not competition. But life being what it is, some months we saved less. Sometimes, nothing at all. Things break. Cars need repairs. Kids outgrow shoes faster than grass grows in spring. Still, I kept saving for Liam. Quietly, steadily. It wasn't a secret. It was a promise. Then, a few weeks ago, Sarah came to me with a notebook and that look she gets when she's made up her mind. She said we needed to put all the cards on the table. She wanted to know exactly what each kid had saved so we could plan for the future. I said fine, I'd tell her what I had saved, but not the money Emily had left. She frowned. "Why not? Don't you think we should look at everything?" I told her it wasn't ours to look at. It was from Emily. For Liam. End of story. That's when the argument started. One of those slow-burning ones that begin polite and end with hurt feelings hanging in the air. She said I was keeping secrets, that I didn't trust her. I said she was asking for something that wasn't mine to share. By the time we went to bed that night, she'd turned her back to me, silent, and I lay there staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd just protected my promise. Or built a wall between us that I might never tear down. The next morning, the house felt too quiet. Sarah was up early making breakfast for the kids like she always did, but the usual chatter between us was gone. She didn't look at me when I came into the kitchen, just slid a plate across the counter and said, "Your coffee's ready." The kids were loud enough to fill the silence. Cereal crunching, cartoons humming in the background, Liam scrolling on his phone with that typical teenage look of mild annoyance at the world. But under it all, there was tension, the kind kids sense even when no one says a word. After I dropped the older ones off at school, Sarah and I were alone. She was sitting at the table, her notebook still there from the night before, open to a list of the kids' names with blank spaces beside them. "I'm not trying to fight with you," she said, not looking up. "I just think we need to be on the same page." I took a seat across from her. "We are. We've talked about what we save every month. That's what matters." She shook her head. "No, it's not just about us. We need to think about the future. If one kid ends up with a lot more, that's going to create problems later. Resentment, jealousy. I've seen it happen." I understood what she meant. I really did. But this wasn't about equality between kids. It was about a mother's dying wish. "Sarah," I said quietly, "the money from Emily isn't family money. It's not part of the pool. It's hers. For her son. I promised I'd protect it." She looked up then, eyes sharp. "You're married to me now. We're supposed to share everything. That's what marriage is. How am I supposed to trust you if you keep things hidden?" "It's not hidden," I said, maybe sharper than I meant. "You know it exists. You just don't need to know the number that only made things worse." "So you don't trust me?" she shot back. "It's not about trust. It's about respect." She crossed her arms. "Respect for who? For your ex-wife? Because it doesn't sound like you're respecting me right now." That one stung. Emily wasn't my ex. She was my late wife. There's a difference, one that cuts deeper than people realize. I didn't say that, though. Instead, I said, I made her a promise. I can't break that, Sarah. She sighed, leaned back in her chair. You make it sound like I want to steal from him. I'm not asking for the money, I just want to understand what we're working with. If one kid's future is secure, maybe we can focus more on the others. It's practical. But beneath her calm tone, I heard something else. Frustration, maybe even fear. Raising 5 kids isn't cheap, and she's always been the planner, the worrier. Maybe this was her way of trying to control what felt uncontrollable. Still, the line was drawn. I wasn't crossing it. I'm sorry, I told her. And I meant it. But I can't do that. The number doesn't matter. What matters is that we keep saving, like we agreed. She closed the notebook and got up. You say that, but it does matter, she said quietly. Because, right now, I feel like I'm the only one here being completely open. She left the room, and the sound of the baby crying upstairs filled the silence she left behind. I sat there for a while, staring at that empty notebook. For the first time, I wondered if maybe the problem wasn't just about money. Maybe it was about what we each believed marriage meant. For her, maybe it was sharing everything. For me, it was keeping promises, even the ones made to ghosts. And maybe, just maybe, those two things were never meant to fit neatly together. That week, Sarah and I barely spoke about it again, but the silence between us had weight. It wasn't the kind that comes from anger. It was the quieter, heavier kind that sinks into everything you do. We still laughed with the kids, still made dinner, still watched TV at night. But there was a wall, now. Invisible, yet impossible to ignore. Liam noticed first. On Thursday evening, as I drove him home from soccer practice, he leaned against the window, earbuds dangling loose, and said, "You and Sarah okay?" I tried to play it off. "We're fine." "Why?" He shrugged, eyes still on the passing houses. "Just feels weird at home." Like everyone's pretending not to notice something. He was perceptive like that. Always had been. Emily used to say he had her eyes and my quiet nature, but her sensitivity. I wasn't sure if that was a blessing or a curse for a 16-year-old. I thought about telling him something honest, something simple. But how do you explain to your son that your new wife wants to discuss the money his late mother left him? That she thinks fairness means sharing something that was never meant to be shared? Instead, I said, "It's just grown-up stuff. We're figuring things out." He nodded, accepting it without pushing further, but I could tell he didn't buy it completely. When we got home, Sarah was sitting at the dining table with her laptop open, bills spread out around her like fallen leaves. I kissed her on the shoulder, but she didn't look up. "Hey," I said softly. "Hey." Her voice was neutral, distant. "Need help?" "No, I'm fine." Liam disappeared upstairs. The younger ones were in the living room, building a Lego castle that looked more like a futuristic disaster zone. I sat across from Sarah and watched her type something furiously. "You okay?" I asked after a moment. She stopped typing and looked at me. "I've been running numbers," she said. "Even if we save what we planned, it's not going to be enough for all of them. Not for college, not with inflation." "I know," I said quietly, "but we'll manage." "We always do." Her eyes softened, but just for a second. It's easier to believe that when one of them already has a safety net. I sighed. "Sarah, please." "No," she said quickly before I could finish. "I'm not asking again. I wish I understood why you can't trust me with this." I rubbed my forehead. "It's not about trust. It's about a promise. If it helps, I can tell you this. He'll be okay. That's all you need to know." She nodded slowly, but I could see in her face that okay wasn't enough. She wanted details, certainty, numbers she could add to her spreadsheets and balance out against the others. That night, after everyone went to bed, I stood in Liam's room doorway for a while. He was asleep, headphones still on, a half-finished homework assignment glowing on his laptop. He looked so much like Emily when he slept, peaceful, the same tiny frown between his eyebrows. I remembered the night she made me promise. The tremor in her voice. The trust in her eyes. She'd been thinking of him, of this exact kind of situation. That one day life would move on and someone else would enter my world who wouldn't understand the depth of that vow. I whispered, "I'm keeping my word, Em." Then I turned off the light and closed his door quietly behind me. Downstairs, I found Sarah asleep on the couch, the laptop still open beside her. On the screen was a spreadsheet labeled Future Planning. All kids. 5 columns. 5 names. I closed it gently and sat beside her for a long time, feeling the pull between 2 lives. One past, one present, and wondering how long a promise could stand before it started breaking everything else around it. A few days later, Sarah asked if we could talk. Her voice was calm, careful, the kind of calm that comes from rehearsing every word in your head before saying it out loud. We waited until the younger kids were in bed. Liam was in his room, headphones on, the muffled beat of his music pulsing through the wall. Sarah sat at the kitchen table with 2 cups of tea. No spreadsheets this time, no notebooks, just her and me. "I don't want to fight," she began. "I just need to understand where we go from here." I nodded. "Okay." She took a deep breath. "You said that money isn't ours, and I get that. But what happens when Liam turns 18? When he goes to college? Are you planning to give him full access to it?" "Yes," I said, without hesitation. "It's his. That's always been the plan." She nodded slowly, looking down at her cup. "And do you think that's fair? That he'll go off to school with a cushion while the others might have nothing?" I wanted to choose my words carefully, but emotion got there first. "It's not about fair. It's about right. That money isn't ours to redistribute." Her eyes flashed. "But we're supposed to be a family, aren't we? Not separate accounts and secret promises? You keep talking about ours and hers, but you married me. Doesn't that mean anything?" "It means everything," I said quietly. "But it doesn't erase what came before. Emily trusted me with something important. You're asking me to break that. I'm asking you to share," she said, voice breaking a little. "I would never do anything to hurt your son. I just want transparency. I want to feel like I'm part of your world. All of it. Not just the parts you're comfortable showing me." Her words cut deeper than I wanted to admit. I wasn't trying to shut her out. But some doors, once opened, let things out that can never be put back. "I understand," I said, finally. "But there are some things that belong to the past. This is one of them. It's not a secret. It's sacred." She leaned back, silent for a long time. Then softly, "You talk about Emily like she's still here." "She is," I said, before I could stop myself. "Every time I look at Liam, she's there. Every time I remember that promise, she's there." Sarah blinked fast, looking away. "And where does that leave me?" That question hung in the air, heavy and unanswerable. I reached for her hand, but she didn't take it. "Sarah," I said gently, "this isn't about choosing her over you. It's about being the kind of man I told her I'd be, and the kind of father Liam needs me to be." She didn't answer. We sat in silence, the clock ticking loudly in the background, filling the spaces where our words used to be. Eventually, she stood up. "I think I'm going to bed," she said quietly. "Good night." "Good night," I replied, my voice barely audible. When she left, I stayed at the table, staring at her untouched tea. It had gone cold, a thin layer of film forming on the surface. For the first time, I wondered if Sarah was right. In trying to keep my promise to Emily, I was breaking another one I'd made later. The one to Sarah when I vowed to build a life of honesty and unity. Was I honoring the dead, or was I letting her shadow keep haunting the living? I didn't know. But as I sat there alone, the faint sound of Liam's music upstairs felt almost like an answer. Distant, familiar, and full of everything I was still trying to protect. Tension has a way of seeping into every corner of a house. It hides in small pauses, in the way footsteps sound heavier, and how 2 people can sit beside each other on the couch and feel miles apart. That's how it was for Sarah and me after that night. We weren't fighting, not exactly, but we weren't right either. Conversations became shorter, laughter rarer. Even the kids picked up on it. One evening, Emma, Sarah's 13-year-old daughter, asked at dinner, "Why are you and Mom being weird?" Sarah froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. I smiled awkwardly and said, "We're just tired, sweetheart." Grown-up stuff, Emma looked unconvinced but dropped it. Kids are sharp like that. They don't need the details to feel the storm. Later that night, after the kids were asleep, I found Sarah sitting in our bedroom, scrolling through her phone. I hesitated before speaking. "We can't keep going like this," I said quietly. She didn't look up. "You mean pretending nothing's wrong?" "Yeah." She sighed and set her phone down. "I don't know what you want me to say, Mark. You've made it clear there's a part of your life that's off limits to me." "It's not like that." "Isn't it?" she asked. Because that's exactly how it feels. Her voice wasn't angry. It was tired. And somehow that hurt more. I sat beside her. Sarah, you knew I was a widower when we met. You knew Emily would always be part of my life because of Liam. That doesn't mean there's no room for you. I never wanted to compete with her, she said, but sometimes I feel like I'm living with both of you. The words hit hard. I didn't know what to say, because maybe there was some truth in them. Maybe Emily still lived in the spaces I refused to let go of, in Liam's smile, in the photo on the mantle, in the unspoken promises that shaped every choice I made. But how could I erase her without erasing a part of my son? I'm trying, I said finally, to balance it all. She nodded, eyes glistening. And I'm trying to understand. But you have to see how this feels for me. You talk about protecting Liam's future. But what about our other kids? What about the life we're building? I am protecting that, I said, by being the kind of man who keeps his word. She shook her head slowly. Sometimes, keeping one promise means breaking another. I didn't have a response for that. We sat in silence again, the kind that didn't need words to hurt. The next morning, things went on as usual. School drop-offs, breakfast chaos, the rhythm of family life continuing as if nothing was wrong. But everything felt fragile. A few nights later, I overheard Sarah on the phone with her sister. Her voice was hushed but tense. No, he won't tell me, she said. It's about his son's money. Yeah. From his late wife. I know it's not mine, but still. We're supposed to be a team, right? I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but the words lodged deep. We're supposed to be a team. That's what marriage was supposed to be. A team. A partnership. But right now, it felt like we were playing for different sides. When she hung up, I quietly stepped back into the hallway before she could see me. I felt guilty for listening, and guilty for what she'd said, being true. The cracks were there now, small, but spreading. And deep down, I knew they weren't just about money anymore. They were about trust, grief, and the ghosts neither of us knew how to live with. It happened on a Saturday afternoon, the kind of day that should have been easy. The house smelled of pancakes and coffee, sunlight spilling through the kitchen windows. The little ones were building a fort out of couch cushions, and for a few brief hours, everything felt almost normal again. Then, out of nowhere, Sarah said, I talked to my ex last night. Her tone was calm, but something in it made me pause. Oh yeah? Yeah. We were discussing savings for Emma and Josh. He said he's been putting away money every month for them since the divorce. That's good, I said cautiously. She looked at me then, really looked. So now I know what they have, which means the only mystery left in this family is Liam. The air shifted, heavy and familiar. The conversation we'd both been avoiding creeping back in. Sarah, I started. We've talked about this. No, she said, voice sharp now. You've refused to talk about this. There's a difference. I set down my coffee slowly. I'm not refusing. I'm protecting what isn't ours. She crossed her arms, eyes flashing. You're protecting a number, Mark. That's all it is. A number. You make it sound like some sacred relic. I'm your wife. Don't I deserve to know everything about our family's finances? I took a deep breath, steadying myself. It's not our family's finances. It's his. It's from his mother. I promised her. She cut me off, her voice rising. You promised her. But what about the promises you made to me? To be open? To be partners? The kids froze in the living room. Even the baby stopped babbling. Sarah lowered her voice but didn't back down. You don't even see it, do you? She said, eyes glistening. You treat that promise like it's holy, like she's still sitting here at this table with us. How am I supposed to compete with a ghost? That's not fair, I said quietly. You're my wife. I love you. But I can't erase Emily, not from my life, not from Liam's. She turned away, tears starting to fall. I'm not asking you to erase her. I'm asking you to let me in, to stop shutting me out like I'm some stranger you can't trust. I hesitated, then said softly, Sarah, this isn't about trust. It's about right and wrong. She looked back at me, her face breaking. And you really can't see that from where I'm standing? It feels exactly the opposite. For a moment, neither of us said a word. The only sound was the ticking of the clock and the faint hum of the refrigerator. Then she whispered, I can't do this anymore. My heart dropped. What do you mean? I mean, she said, wiping her face. I can't live in a marriage where I feel like an outsider. Where your past gets more honesty than I do. Sarah, She shook her head. I'm not saying I want a divorce, but I need space. I'm going to stay at my sister's for a few days. I wanted to stop her, to argue, to promise I'd try harder, but the words wouldn't come. Maybe because deep down I knew she wasn't leaving out of anger. She was leaving because she was hurt, because she wanted to be part of something I'd built walls around. When she left with the little ones later that day, the house felt hollow. Liam came downstairs, standing in the doorway. Did she go? He asked, quietly. Yeah, I said. He nodded, looking uneasy. Because of me? I shook my head. No, not you. But even as I said it, I wondered how much of that was true. That night, after I tucked him in, I sat alone in the kitchen. The same table where Emily had made me promise all those years ago. The sunlight from the morning was gone, replaced by the cold glow of the streetlight outside. And for the first time, I wasn't sure anymore whether keeping that promise had saved anything or just broken everything else along the way. The house was too quiet after Sarah left. You don't realize how much sound a family makes until it's gone. The hum of conversation, the shuffle of feet, the chaos of small children turning every room into an adventure zone. Now it was just me and Liam. He tried to act normal, but I could see the guilt hanging on him. He spent more time in his room, headphones on, eyes avoiding mine. I didn't push. Sometimes silence is its own kind of conversation. The next morning, I made pancakes like Sarah usually did on weekends. Liam came downstairs, hair messy, still half asleep. He sat down and watched me cook for a while before finally speaking. Is she mad at you? Yeah, I said quietly. A little. Because of the money? I hesitated, then nodded. Sort of. He poked at his plate. You didn't tell her, did you? No. He was quiet for a moment, then said something I didn't expect. Maybe you should. I turned to him, startled. What? He shrugged, not looking up. If it's just money, and it'll make her stop being mad, maybe it's not a big deal. I sat across from him. It's not that simple, bud. That money, it's from your mom. She wanted it to be yours. Just yours. He looked at me, then, really looked, and I saw Emily in his eyes. That same calm, curious depth. But Mom's gone, he said softly. And you're the one here now. You have to live with Sarah, not her. It hit harder than he probably meant it to. He was right, in a way. Emily was gone. But promises don't disappear with people. They linger. They define who you are long after the person who asked for them is gone. Later that day, I went for a walk around the neighborhood. It was crisp and quiet, the kind of afternoon that made you think too much. I passed a playground where our younger kids usually played, their laughter echoing in memory. I pulled out my phone and opened my contacts. Sarah's name was right there at the top. I almost called, twice, but didn't. What would I even say? That I'd changed my mind? That I was ready to betray Emily's trust to keep peace with my wife? I walked until the sun started setting, the sky painted in streaks of orange and purple. When I got home, I found an email waiting in my inbox. It was from Sarah. Subject, we need to talk. The message was short. I've been thinking a lot. I understand why you made the promise, but I need you to understand what it feels like for me to be married to someone who keeps a part of himself locked away. I don't care about the number. I care about being trusted. When you're ready to talk, I'll be here. I read it twice, maybe 3 times. It wasn't angry. It was sad, honest, human. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing Emily's voice in my head, that last night in the hospital, her hand cold but steady in mine. Promise me you'll protect him. And then Sarah's voice echoing in the present. I just want to be trusted. Both women wanted the same thing from me, in different ways, to do right by someone they loved. But what if doing right by one meant hurting the other? I sat there in the dark between the ghosts of past promises and the fragile reality of the present, wondering if love was sometimes less about choosing sides, and more about finding the courage to tell the truth. 2 days passed before I finally drove over to Sarah's sister's house, where she'd been staying with the kids. The air was heavy with that strange mix of hope and dread that comes before a difficult conversation, the kind that can either mend everything or break it for good. When I pulled into the driveway, Sarah was already outside, sitting on the porch steps with a mug in her hands. She didn't look angry anymore, just tired. That somehow was worse. Hey, I said, walking up slowly. Hey, she replied, eyes on her coffee. You got my message. I did. Silence. The kind that sits between two people who've both rehearsed their lines and still don't know where to begin. I've been thinking, I said finally, about what you wrote. Bout. She looked up at me, and I saw the faintest flicker of emotion in her eyes. And I know it must feel like I'm hiding something from you, but it's not about trust. It's about a promise. I made it to Emily before she died, that I'd protect what she left for Liam, that it would always be his, not mine, not anyone else's. I understand that, Sarah said quietly. I do. But when you shut me out completely, when you make it sound like I don't deserve to even know, it makes me feel like there's a wall between us, like I'm competing with a ghost that hurt, mostly because it was true. I'd never wanted to compare them. Emily and Sarah were two entirely different parts of my life. But grief has a long shadow, and maybe I hadn't realized how far it stretched into the present. I'm sorry, I said. I never meant for you to feel that way. She took a deep breath. Then, tell me this. If something happened to you tomorrow, what would happen to that money? Would Liam know how to access it? Would anyone? Or would it just vanish because of a promise you made years ago? I hesitated. He knows about it. I've shown him where it is, how it works. It's his. Sarah nodded slowly. Okay, then that's something. I don't need the details, not the number, not the account. But I do need to feel like we're partners. Like you can trust me enough to talk about the things that matter, even if they're uncomfortable. Her tone wasn't demanding, just tired, honest. I sat beside her on the steps. For the first time in weeks, we were close enough that I could feel the warmth from her shoulder. You know, I said after a while, Emily and I used to talk about the future a lot, even when she knew she wasn't going to be part of it. I think that's what makes this so hard. I promised her I'd protect what she wanted for Liam, and now I have to find a way to do that without hurting you. Sarah looked down at her mug. Maybe protecting her memory doesn't have to mean closing yourself off from your life, now. That line lingered between us like a bridge being rebuilt. After a moment, she said, let's start small. You don't have to tell me everything about that account. Just help me understand what you need to feel okay about it. And I'll tell you what I need to feel like your wife again. It was the first time in weeks that our conversation didn't feel like a battlefield. We didn't solve everything that night, but we talked, really talked. About money, about our kids, about the messy reality of blending families and ghosts of the past. When I finally left, the air between us felt lighter. Fragile, yes, but lighter. And as I drove home under a sky full of quiet stars, I realized something simple but profound. Promises don't have to trap you in the past. They just have to guide you toward doing right in the present. Maybe for the first time in a long while, I was ready to do both. After that night on the porch, things at home slowly started to shift. Not overnight, but in small, meaningful ways. The tension didn't disappear. It was like trying to untangle a knot that had been tightening for years. But we learned to talk without the walls crashing down. Sarah returned home with the little ones a few days later. Liam greeted her with a quiet, welcome back, and even though the conversation was minimal, there was relief in the air, like everyone collectively exhaled. We started making small routines, like a silent truce, meals together again, bedtime stories, homework supervision. But the bigger questions still lingered: finances, futures, fairness. One evening, after putting the little ones to bed, Sarah and I sat at the kitchen table with our laptops open. She wasn't prying. She wasn't asking about Liam's savings. Instead, she had a new spreadsheet titled Our Family Plan. Only our contributions. Only what we controlled. This is all I want to know, she said. What we can do for the kids. Not what we can't touch, I smiled. Relief washed over me. Finally, we were focusing on what mattered. Our family, our hands-on efforts, our love, not the past. We began recalculating our monthly savings, adjustments for unexpected expenses, college planning, daycare, emergencies. For the first time in a long time, it felt like a joint effort, like we were on the same team. Liam noticed the change, too. One night, he came into the kitchen while I was paying bills. Dad, he said, leaning against the counter, I know Mom left me money. I don't care if you tell Sarah the number or not. I want everyone to be okay. I felt my throat tighten. I know, buddy. And that's the plan. I'm making sure of it. He nodded and smiled faintly. Good. I don't want anyone fighting over what Mom left. That's not what she would have wanted. I watched him walk back to his room and realized how much of this was bigger than numbers or promises. It was about teaching him values, responsibility, respect, fairness, even when life throws impossible choices at you. Later that week, Sarah and I sat together, reviewing the new plan. She reached over and took my hand. I get it now, she said softly. You kept your promise to Emily. And you're still keeping your promise to me and our kids. I can see it. Her words hit me harder than I expected. Years of fear and tension, weeks of silence, all boiled down to this moment of understanding. We weren't perfect. Our blended family still had challenges ahead. Birthdays, school expenses, teen drama, unforeseen crises. But for the first time, I felt like we were building something stronger than old promises or past grief. That night, as I tucked the little ones into bed, I felt a strange sense of peace. Liam was asleep with a book on his nightstand. Sarah's hand lingered in mine when she kissed me goodnight. And the house, for the first time in weeks, felt like a home again. I thought of Emily and whispered a quiet thanks. Not for the money, but for teaching me what it means to keep a promise. And I thought of Sarah, realizing that marriage isn't about sharing everything. It's about understanding each other, trusting each other, and finding a path forward together. We were ready to plan for the future, not just for one child, not just for the ghosts of the past, but for all of them, our kids, our family, our life together. The next morning, the house felt different. Not because anything had magically changed. The kids were still loud, breakfast still a chaotic mess, and the laundry pile still a mountain waiting to be conquered. But because the tension that had hovered over us for weeks had eased, just slightly. Sarah was in the kitchen, humming softly while making pancakes. The little ones were sitting at the table, laughing at something Liam said. And Liam himself, usually sullen in the mornings, was joking with his siblings, a sparkle in his eyes I hadn't seen in a while. I watched them for a moment and realized that what we'd been missing wasn't numbers, spreadsheets, or even perfect planning. It was connection, the kind that comes from understanding, from compromise, from seeing each other's humanity. After breakfast, Sarah came up behind me and slipped her hand into mine. We'll figure this, she said quietly. All of it. I nodded. Yeah. Together for the first time, I felt like we were truly partners. Not just coexisting under one roof, not just managing chaos, but building a life together with respect for the past and hope for the future. Later that day, Liam came to me while I was organizing the garage. Dad? He said, hesitating. Yeah, buddy? I just want you to know, I get why you're doing what you're doing. Mom left me that money, and I know it's not for anyone else. But I don't want it to come between us. You, Sarah, the little ones. I don't want anyone to feel left out. I knelt down and hugged him. I know, Liam. And that's why I'm being careful. But I promise, no one's going to be left out. We'll make sure everyone's future is secure. Together, he smiled, the weight of worry finally lifting from his shoulders. Okay, thanks, Dad. That evening, Sarah and I sat on the couch after the kids were asleep. She rested her head on my shoulder. I've been thinking, she said softly. It doesn't matter whose money it is. What matters is how we love them, how we raise them, how we prepare them for the future. We can do that without fighting over numbers. I held her hand tightly. Exactly. It's not about money. It's about trust, love, and making the best choices we can for them. She smiled, finally truly at ease. We're doing this. We really are. I looked around at our home, messy, loud, alive, and thought about Emily, watching over us from somewhere beyond, and Sarah beside me, fully present, fully committed. I realized then that life isn't about erasing the past or ignoring promises. It's about learning to balance them with the present, about building something lasting out of the pieces we're given. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Hope. Hope that our blended family, messy, complicated, imperfect, could thrive. That our kids would grow up knowing that love isn't just about sharing everything equally, but about keeping promises, protecting each other, and building a life together. We were 5 kids, 2 parents, and the shadows of the past stretching alongside us. But for the first time, I felt like we weren't carrying the shadows alone. We were carrying them together. And that made all the difference. Thanks for watching until the end. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments what you think and what you would do in his place.